So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and today we will finally be making our return to the great city of Dale. Obviously this is one of the few sort of set-piece, large-scale sieges which is actually working in the game at the moment. I'd like nothing more than to finally do Minas Ithil, but as it is, of course, the Númenórean style sieges in that vein are broken for the time being until the hotfix comes out, so we shall have to do without that for the time being, but it's good to finally return to Dale. And this is actually a replay which is fairly old at this point. It was given to me, I think, nearly 2 months ago at this point, near to, not too long actually after the hotfix came out, but obviously by that time I had already done a siege on Dale, and I'm trying not to repeat the same map twice too quickly, but I feel as though enough time has passed now that we can finally take another look at Dale. After all, Dale was sort of like the big flagship siege map that was released with 0.97, and a good one it is, a very nice layered settlement with a lot of complexity to it, and sometimes that complexity can work to the detriment of the defenders actually, because you can just sort of forget that certain pathways exist through the settlement. But we'll go through the attackers first of all, and the scenario here, I suppose, is that Gondor won the war in the south, but Dale capitulated in the north, and they are now going to be serving the remaining forces of evil, who Angmar have now taken up the main banner for that. So the Witch King obviously survived Pelennor Fields, and also the Númenóreans are here, the Black Númenóreans. So Gondor, 5 Gondorian armies going to be marching on Dale, obviously a very accomplished infantry faction, so they should have the stuff to be able to really contest a lot of those grindy choke point fights and be able to really engage in that sort of warfare. But of course the factions they're facing off against are going to be no slouches in that regard either. It was Eclipse that sent me this battle replay quite a while ago, so big thank you to him and to all the players involved. So we have some Gondor infantry with both levels of armour upgrade. The plate armour should really help in a situation like this, because obviously Gondor are going to come under quite a lot of pressure, especially you'd imagine from the Dalian and Númenórean archers that they're going to be facing off against, and the armour will help them weather that storm just a little bit better. They've also got some fully upgraded Axemen of Lasarnak. Armour piercing is going to be useful against all of the factions they're facing off against today, so a good choice, I would suggest. We also have some more Gondorian infantry pushing up this siege tower. Back here, another unit which obviously Gondor can claim to have, which no other faction really has a unit like this in the Fountain Guard, because they are two-handed spears, they have to have phalanx, a very, very strong unit. Obviously we've seen the Fountain Guard do work in the past, and they're still probably one of Gondor's most important units. They're not fully reliant on them anymore, but still a very nice unit to have in the back pocket, especially in a siege like this if you can avoid archers. We've got some Raven Helms of Caer Andros as well, a very nice Swordmaster unit, obviously nice skill, nice high base damage as well, so they should be able to do quite well obviously, and what sets them apart from other human units of this type is the fact they have higher base armour than them, so also quite resilient to range fire, at least more so than most other units of this type. Some more Axemen of Lasarnak back here, so yeah, more armour piercing, which is good. Even more armour piercing in the shape of the Citadel Guard, of course. They are spears, so they're still subject to the spear malice, but that armour piercing can more than make up for that, especially with how elite the Citadel Guard are. More sharp pointy sticks back here as the Guards of Osgiliath are also here. Very nice unit of pikes, of course, again. Got to try and avoid those archers if they can. Some Vanguard of King Elisar and the Nimlothian Honour Guard forming up the elite core of Gondor, so the Swordmaster units, the bodyguards, and then my personal favourite, the Nimlothian Honour Guard. Again, not many factions have an equivalent to this, so it's a nice thing for Gondor to have nice armour-piercing bodyguard tier spears. And there's some more Gondor infantry out on those siege towers over there, as well as some militia infantry as well. So moving on, we have Froggy, who's playing as the second Gondor army. He too has got some upgraded Gondor infantry, although he has also added some upgraded Gondor spearmen into the mix as well, so they obviously have that shield wall formation, which could be useful. They will do significantly less damage, of course, but they could also be used to zone out enemy cavalry that maybe tried to come out of the walls early on, which is always nice. Some civilians pushing up a ram, of course, the gates are a little bit further away, but obviously the civilians very much the sacrificial lambs here. A trebuchet as well. A trebuchet could be very, very useful, although it doesn't have much ammunition, so I probably wouldn't use it actually against the walls of Dale. But we'll see what Froggy deems a worthwhile use of his time here. Got some more Gondor infantry, got some Pelagia Marines, so obviously the Javelin's a very nice potential tool for them. Wardens of the White Tower, some Guards of Osgiliath, the Wardens of the White Tower, of course. Multiple HP sword and board bodyguards, although not quite as numerous as something like the Royal Legion of Armenelos, which kind of steals their thunder a little bit to my mind. Gondor infantry, and some more Fountain Guard as well, and that's pretty much it from Froggy's army. His army is sort of all in and amongst his siege towers. In the north, near the bridge, we have Inarius, so he's got some Gondor spears as well. He also has some Gondor militia archers, just to try and help wear down the enemy front line. Some standard Gondor infantry on the front without the armour upgrade this time, so just with their mail and tabards. The spears do have an armour upgrade, though. This unit of Gondor infantry has the first level of armour upgrade, so all over the place with its armour upgrades. We've got some Wardens of Minas Ithil as well as some Athelian Rangers. Obviously both of these units with their body piercing could be incredibly damaging if they can get into position without getting shredded by enemy archers up on the very high walls of Dale first. Some Veterans of Osgiliath, another very high tier unit of archers, very resilient, shields, very nice armour, and pretty damn good in melee when all is said and done as well. Some Citadel Guard, obviously armour piercing again. Pelagia Marines, very useful for wearing down a static front line, especially with heavily armoured pikes and halberds. Nimlothian Honour Guard, Wardens of the White Tower, and some more Citadel Guard, and that's pretty much it with some Gondor spears, so he's just going to be waiting here. He's not going to be able to get his siege towers across that bridge, I don't think. We shall see. And then over here we have... I could have yeah, there are two armies over here, I was just wondering. We have Dollar Elf, he's got some Wardens of the White Tower as well, he's got some Athelian Rangers, some Wardens of Minas Ithil, so nice to see the Wardens of Minas Ithil, because they're not really all that efficient to bring, because they're so expensive. They do less DPS than a unit of standard Rangers, and obviously, you know, kind of difficult to be efficient with them, but they could pay off here, just because it does allow Gondor to have 2 units of Rangers. Veterans of Osgiliath and Marksmen of Caer Andros, big fan of the Marksmen of Caer Andros, of course, with those 2-handed swords they pull out. Some Nimlothian Honour Guard, some Vanguard of King Elisar. We also have some Fountain Guard, some Axemen of Lasarnak with the armour upgrades. Lots of Axemen of Lasarnak actually, as well as some Gondor infantry as well with the armour upgrades. And then the final Gondor army over here near the red line, we have Darkwolf 44. Big fan of playing with Gondor is he. Wardens of the White Tower, some Nimlothian Honour Guard, lots of Citadel Guard as well as some Fountain Guard. Then over here, yeah, more upgraded Axemen of Lasarnak, so good to see them. Although I think this is just the first level of armour upgrade that they're wielding. Some of their axes have not yet phased into existence either. And some Pelagia Marines over here, but surely he has some hidden units as well. But obviously Gondor very much going to have a big numbers advantage on the 3 defending armies here. Having said that, one of the defending armies is Angmar, so they will be able to provide quite a lot of numbers here. Lucky Hussar, who has got some Snaga archers. This was before he left for a bit of national service as well, I believe, so good to see him, sort of the spectre of him as he's before he comes back again. Snaga archers, we've got some Pharazim nobles and some Witchram Inquisitors, so some very nice melee cav backed up by a rather large force of Romena Caribarim as well. We've got some upgraded Guardians of Khan Doom and Witchram pikemen getting ready to hold the gate. Some Blackwatch Legion over here as well, so the Blackwatch Legion basically prevent enemy mass pushes in this situation, because obviously you're not going to want to push into the attackers here, you'll just get yourself surrounded and killed. Bloodbath McGrath, who's going to be playing as Dale, got some Barding Herd, a very nice unit of halberds, which should be very good actually against Gondor, unless they come up against something like Fountain Guard, in which case they will be outmatched. Athala Rangers could be exceptional in this situation. Trebuchet in a nice position, as well as the Kelderman River Patrol, a cheap unit, but no less effective unit of javelins. Swordmasters of Esgaroth here, getting ready to receive the Gondorians as well. Some dismounted Earls of Dale. Nice to see the Barrow-wights here, as well as some Barding Herd, and even some Morroquendi pikes as well. Some Morroquendi bows from Dale, some Kelderman River Patrols. We get back into the next layer, we have some Morroquendi bows, Dalian Paladins, more forces from Angmar as the Barrow-wights and the Guardians of Khan Doom stand guard. Swordmasters of Esgaroth and Earls of Dale also ready to charge in should they be needed. A Trebuchet, another Trebuchet. Back here, Sin of the Dark Cloud playing as Numenor, by the way. And who's playing as Angmar again? It was Lucky Hussar, yes. So Naruna Iron Roar Guard up here. We've got some Witchram Hammer Guard, some Trolls of Angmar, Pharazim Swordmasters, Romena and Nardukadar, Romena Bawabram, so very elite armies on the defence here as you would expect. Seafarers of Nindamos, very damaging of course, especially to those heavily armoured Gondorians. Royal Legion of Armenelos, some more Nardukadar. Up here we do have some Adunheim Shadow Bows as well. Honestly, if I were on the defences, Rangers are one of those things you really don't mind going into the red limit on. We've got some Dalian Royal Guard down here, we've got some more Barding Herd guarding this back gate, some Witchram Blackguard, and then a fully Angmar frontline of Barrow-wights, Pikes, and Guardians of Khan Doom, and yet more Trolls. I believe these will be the Trolls of Gundabad. Yes, indeed. And that's pretty much it. So, I mean, without further ado, as we get back over here, let's begin. And I would imagine the cavalry, yeah, immediately the cavalry is going to charge out. No sense in waiting around. Obviously, these players definitely know what they're doing. They've been playing the game for quite some time. And you really don't want to just leave your cavalry bottled up in the backfield, because it's not really going to do anything for you, so you may as well send them out and be super aggressive with them right from the off. So this is going to put Eclipse 2500 under the cosh immediately, because he's going to have to deal with a horde of Romena Caribarim charging towards him. Now, There is an upside to this, believe it or not, from a Gondorian perspective, and that is this is an awful lot of money that the defenders have dumped into these units. If they can shut them down efficiently, then they're in a pretty good place, honestly, the attackers. But right away you can see the problem that Eclipse has is most of his front line, his first wave, was made up of Gondor infantry, no anti-cavalry bonus on them at all, and with all this very heavily armed cavalry coming in to deal out some damage, they're going to struggle, especially seeing as they're also coming under attack from those archers up on the walls dealing additional damage. So certainly Eclipse is the one who drew the short straw here, being placed right in front of the gate with all that cavalry. The Witch-Realm Inquisitors, not shock cavalry of course, but very, very tough to bring down. And Eclipse here is going to get up into a nice ball, and he's going to have all of those spears and pikes and Fountain Guard trying to guard every position that the cavalry can charge in on, making it more difficult for them to get kills off. But they do still manage to find a decent charge there onto some Gondor infantry that was sticking out. Still trying to charge in, but this is where Citadel Guard and Guards of Osgiliath are, so you can see immediately some of those cavalry models starting to drop. The Cerebrum also shaken for a second there. That's how you know you've chosen the wrong target to charge into, but still this is going to put Eclipse under a good deal of pressure very early on here. Good to see aggressive cavalry play from outside the city, and it's a lot of tough cavalry as well, like Pharazim Nobles and Witch-Realm Inquisitors backed up by a whole bunch of Cerebrum. There are more devastating cavalry forces from like charging into infantry, but that is still a very tough selection of cavalry to try and wear down. Here you can see the Nimlothian Honor Guard from the front taking damage from up on top of the walls, but only from Snaga archers, I think. You can see there the cavalry trying to charge into the Nimlothian Honor Guard. They didn't really get any kills though, and the Cerebrum taking some damage in return, but they will be peeling away the hit points of this high tier Gondorian infantry unit, but I'm not really sure that's a worthwhile use of their cavalry. They definitely need to be very savvy with their cavalry here based on how much money they've spent on it. It wouldn't have been so bad if it was a cheap cav force, but it is not. So now Eclipse is going to be sort of forming up that box. In the north, Gondor making some progress, smashing down the gate on that side of the bridge, and now you can see the cavalry is peeling off, heading towards Froggy. I mean, Froggy has probably been watching this happen, and I would imagine he's probably got his army. Well, I mean, he's moving now, but he should be able to sort of zone this out maybe a little bit more easily. But having said that, I mean, he's got Fountain Guard. He has more Gondor Spearmen, which you would imagine puts him in a better place to zone out this cavalry, but I mean, these civilians are just sort of sticking out in no man's land, and these are free kills if the defensive cavalry can charge into them. Like, it's not the most important target, but I mean, if you can kill them with no cost to yourself, you may as well take them. That wasn't the best charge though. They're sort of wrapping around the ram there. It's enough to cause the civilians to become shaken though. They're obviously not fighting men and women. They're farmers wielding shovels and pitchforks. Cavalry menacing this side of Froggy's army as well, so definitely a tricky situation for him to be in, and you can see the cavalry giving him the runaround there. A little bit slow to react perhaps as well, as they charge into the front of those Gondor infantry when you really want the Fountain Guard taking the brunt of that charge, because they'll be able to do a lot of damage as it is though. Gondor infantry taking yet more casualties, peeling away this Gondorian manpower as this fight goes on, and these spearmen are also pointing the wrong way, so they are going to take some damage there. Only one casualty, to be fair, at the hands of the Witch-Realm Inquisitors. The Witch King himself needs to take care that he doesn't get caught on those armoured Gondorian spears. The civilians do return from routing. Every cloud has a silver lining. I'm not sure why this Gondor infantry decided to try and charge in there. What the Gondor infantry needs to do is just get in behind some Fountain Guard, do exactly what Eclipse was doing, and sort of form up a tactical noob square to try and deal with this cavalry. Because as Gondor in this situation, you really don't have much of a choice but to do that, and you can see there the Fountain Guard do manage to turn around in time, and that Romana Cerebrum is going to really regret getting entangled with the Fountain Guard. Again, it's a fine line between doing a lot of good damage and suddenly all of your cavalry can end up dying. You can see there's more dead cavalry there. More kills on the Gondor infantry. Again, the cavalry's probably done not spectacularly, but it's done okay so far. You know, Gondor can afford to burn through some of their manpower, but certainly not all of it. This unit of Gondor infantry, I think, is just being thrown to the wolves here as they continually get cycle charged here by the mounted Númenóreans. They're not dying too quickly though, to be fair to them. You can see some Fountain Guard heading out to maybe try and give some support, but that will of course leave a bit of a gap over here for the civilians to be charged. Meanwhile, See over here, the Gondorians are now starting to form up on this gatehouse over here. The Raven Helms and the Gondor infantry are going to be the first ones to charge in through the gate. The siege towers are also in position. And there is going to be a unit that comes down over here as well. Some Gondor infantry are going to be able to force those Goblin trackers off the wall. I'm actually surprised Lucky Hussar didn't take them off the wall sooner. Because obviously Goblin trackers are going to get absolutely monstered in melee by a unit of human men-at-arms. Especially as armoured as the Gondorian ones are. Guards of Osgiliath also coming in. Another unit of Gondor infantry coming up here with the Snaga archers. I mean, it's possible that he's too busy trying to micro his Witch Realm Inquisitors against Froggy. That makes a good deal of sense. Because now his archers are going to be caught by those infantrymen. And this front line is not going to be sufficient, I don't think, with the Gondorian pikes and Fountain Guard coming forward, backed up by those Raven Helms and the upgraded Gondor infantry. A single unit of Witch Realm Pikemen and Guardians of Khan Doom is not going to be enough, armour upgrades or no. And already the Gondorians are starting to filter through that front line, so despite being put under a decent amount of pressure early on here, Eclipse is starting to make some decent headway. Froggy is managing to sort of zone out the cavalry continually here, and actually you can see over here this unit of Romana Caribra now caught between the Gondor infantry and the Fountain Guard, and this will be the end of them. So the defensive cavalry is starting to burn out a little bit. Pharazim nobles here, you can see now the Trebuchet coming in, getting a very nice hit there into the Nimlothian Honor Guard and the Wardens of the White Tower. Obviously the Trebuchet is much more accurate in this patch, but still at this range there's still a pretty decent chance they'll miss, so very fortunate indeed that he was able to hit there. You can see there the Pharazim nobles just sort of waiting. The Romana Caribra do regroup. Not sure where the Witch Realm Inquisitors have gone. Froggy's still the one that's under pressure now from the defensive artillery, but he won't mind that, I don't think. Not if Eclipse continues to make headway over there. You can see the trolls waddling out of that gatehouse. Actually, let's go and have a look at that, because obviously this is the downside to sending up a ram unsupported like this, because now you have just a basic unit of Gondor infantry that are getting absolutely smashed into the dirt by the trolls of Gundabad. Unupgraded as well, so they're not even going to be able to mitigate any of this damage. But there are 3 armies up here, which does surprise me. This is the narrowest area of approach that the attackers could take, and the vast bulk of their forces are actually using this way into the settlement, which plays into the defenders' hands, I think. I feel as though at least one of those armies probably should have attacked the other side, because there's a huge gap in the defences now over here, because they're able to sort of reposition all those units, because they know that 3 armies are going to be attacking from the north, but we'll see. Meanwhile, over here, Gondor, their good fortune continues. Eclipse doing a good job at clearing out this section of the wall. The Blackwatch Legion are getting up on the wall to try and stop the rot, but I don't think them alone is going to be enough here. There's Axemen of Lasarnak in here, which will be a good match for them. Having said that, down here on foot, things are starting to go pretty poorly for Gondor. You can see that another unit of Blackwatch Legion is down here, but mainly the Trolls of Angmar doing a ton of damage to that initial Gondorian expedition, and Angmar doing a good job there, forcing Eclipse's Gondor army back out of the gates. They're still up on the walls, and still doing a good job up on the walls. I can't believe the balance of forces is evenly matched. I mean, it's only Goblin trackers they're facing. I feel as though the towers are probably skewing that a little bit, but now you can see, oof. So there you can see the Trebuchet from Sin of the Dark Cloud trying to break these Gondorians now that the Trolls are in there as well. And what was looking pretty good just a second ago is starting to turn pretty sour for Eclipse. I mean, to be fair, he's the only one that's really making a play for the outer walls at this point, whereas all of his allies are lagging a little bit further behind, so the defenders can afford to focus on him somewhat, but still, those 2 Trebuchets from Sin of the Dark Cloud bombarding both Eclipse and Froggy as they are in the more open area of the city. And again, I'm not really sure why this many Gondorians are over here in this bottleneck. Maybe it'll pan out, because Gondor can do very well in a grindy choke point kind of fight, but you very rarely want to give the defenders the opportunity to engage in that kind of warfare. Gondor trying to retreat, I think just trying to recycle their position as they realise that things are going pretty poorly at this point, and they are going to retreat back outside the gates. But I mean, they can't really afford to just hang around in front of the gates for too long, because those towers, they don't kill very quickly, but those kills will add up. I don't think Eclipse has much choice here but to really just keep trying to knock this defence down. He really needs his allies to make some plays here. Blackwatch Legion with those large maces doing their thing. Not many Gondorians left up on the walls. These brave men trying to take on the Trolls of Angmar. An unenviable task. I wouldn't fancy being toe punted to death by a troll. Some barding herd ready. I mean, Dale really haven't had to commit anything as of yet. It's really just been Angmar and Numenor using their cavalry and infantry to good effect thus far. Speaking of which, there are still these Numenorian cavalrymen. And you can see here, Froggy trying to get his trebuchet into a good position may have just signed their death warrant, because here comes the Numenorian cavalry once again. The trebuchet crew is going to charge headlong into this cavalry. Looks like they're spearmen though, which will be interesting. I mean, Gondorian trebuchet crew having spears at their disposal, but I mean, it's still not going to save them here. Especially not when their only support is going to come from Gondor infantry. If it was Fountain Guard, it would be slightly different perhaps, but I mean, they are actually doing quite a good job here, but with that charge on the Pharazim nobles, that should be it for the trebuchet crew, and that's a big loss for Gondor. Again, I do have some sympathy though for Froggy and Eclipse. The armies in the north are really not moving quickly enough. Gondor continuing to pour forwards here, trying to chase off that cavalry, but when you're in this situation when the cavalry keeps poking and prodding away at your army and you feel, yourself losing that manpower piece by piece, it can be a frustrating experience. But Froggy, his army is stretched now. I mean, it's probably a good thing that Sin has lost a lot of cavalry, because there's a lot of gaps that he could be exploiting here if he had his full cavalry contingent. So I would say that certainly all of this cavalry that Angmar and Numenor have brought has turned out to be a very good pick indeed. They've used it very nicely. There goes the ram as well. A very fortunate shot indeed, trying to get more kills on the Gondor infantry. And again, this is just going to make Froggy's life more difficult in the long run, because he will be able to defeat this cavalry eventually, but his army will be in a battered and bruised state, and then he'll have to assault the city whilst being down on manpower. Onto the White Tower, and Nimlothi and Onagard in the vanguard here. Pharazim nobles getting caught on some Gondor spearmen. There goes our Pharazon himself with his gold pope hat. Going to charge into, going to try and go after the Gondor infantry, but actually pulling out at the last minute. Both sides losing that particular game of chicken. Meanwhile, here you can see that Angmar actually pushing out onto the bridge. Barrow-wights first with the Trolls of Gundabad, and now they're also going to be pushing up with those upgraded Witchround pikemen. So how do Gondor deal with this? Because I mean, they've chosen this engagement for themselves, so I would assume that they quite fancy their chances in this kind of fight, but it's going to be long and brutal, and I'm not sure whether their allies have got the time to be dealing with that. There goes Froggy's general, ridden down by the Pharazim nobles. There are certainly more shameful opponents you could lose to though. Here the Blackwatch Legion defeat seems certain. The Axemen of the Sarnak well positioned to deal with a unit like the Blackwatch Legion, but having said that, I mean, they're the only... Well, no, there is still some Gondorians up on this side, Ravenhelms and Axemen, albeit very depleted. And they are shaken as a result of the arrow fire from the towers. So it was a bold... It looked like it was going well for Eclipse for a little while there, but quickly, once full attention was turned onto him, his assault fell apart pretty quickly, and now he's in a pretty difficult position because he doesn't have the manpower to really go forwards in force anymore. But he still needs to keep up the pressure, because otherwise, that was all for nothing. Froggy moving forwards, and Froggy actually getting right involved with this front line over here. The Barrow-wights, finally Dale is going to see some action as the Morroquendi pikes move forward to support the Barrow-wights. There's also those Barding herd over there, and also the dismounted Earls of Dale moving forward. Another problem that Froggy may encounter here are the Morroquendi bows, because of course those poison arrows will make breaking the Gondorian assault just that little bit easier. Let's not forget Froggy also has to deal with those Pharazim nobles, and what's left of the Remena Caribrim still running around harassing the back lines. And I think that's why he's trying to get into the settlement, honestly. I think he's trying to just pour into the settlement and then just leave a unit of spears at the back so that the cavalry cannot hit him anymore. But whether he's actually going to be able to get through the gatehouse quickly enough remains to be seen, under that poison arrow fire as well. The Gondorians continuing to push into the settlement. Still those Barding herd in position as well, which obviously should be a fairly good matchup for Gondor with those that armour piercing, but there are a lot of pikes in there, so perhaps not. There's those Earls of Dale ready to move in as well. Some damaged sections of wall, probably from errant trebuchet shots from Froggy. See what's going on over here. So yeah, Eclipse coming forward yet again for round 2 of the assault. Guards of Osgiliath and Ravenhelms taking point. against both Blackwatch Legion and Guardians of Khan Doom. What we've got going on over here? Trebuchet there, I think routing off the Gondorian. So again, Angmar. I mean, Gondor are going to be victorious over here with Gondor infantry. I mean, I'm amazed these Goblin trackers are still standing and fighting. There are those Swordmasters of Esgaroth ready to assist their new Orc overlords. But Eclipse is trying to make something happen here, but he's low on options at this point just because of the losses he's already taken. He also doesn't have the most in terms of ranged units, to be honest with you. Pretty much nothing, actually, in fact. Like a unit of javelins would be absolutely invaluable in this kind of situation. Froggy, meanwhile, trying to make some inroads into the settlement, but unfortunately he is at the mercy of the Kelduin River Patrol. So trying to get into the settlement, I mean, without the support of these javelins, they probably would be able to punch through here, but as it is, Froggy's in massive, massive trouble as these cheap javelins are able to peel away at the Gondorian manpower. And really, he's just going to have to hope they run out of ammunition. And I think that is them running out of ammunition as they pull out their blades. They're terrible in melee, at least. But they were able to get some very nice, efficient kills there. A lot of dead Gondorians. A lot of them look fairly elite as well. There's Fountain Guard amongst their number, and the Wardens of the White Tower are very depleted as well. Still, the Númenórean cavalry comes forward. Froggy going forward in a big blob. He's going to try and deal with them. You can see there the Pharazim nobles doing a good job. The Pelagia Marines trying to chase them off, and they do manage to do so, but most of those javelins actually ended up missing, sailing over the heads of the nobles. Let's have a look and see what's going on in this section of the settlement. Still not a lot of progress made by Gondor. Gondor sending forward some more men, but this is to be expected. Like when you're trying to just batter through the Barrow-wights with sheer numbers, it's rarely going to go quickly. Blackguard are in the background over there, as well as some Guardians of Khan Doom, but yeah, still Barrow-wights in the way. Gondor should win eventually, but these Trolls of Gundabad are still alive, which indicates that they've done some good damage. Interestingly enough, though, you can see those Wardens of Minas Ithil trying to shoot the Barrow-wights without actually going through their own men, so that might really not be helping the Gondorian cause here. Certainly I'd say the defenders have had the better of these engagements thus far. Sin's still making a nuisance of himself with those cavalrymen. Trolls of Angmar up on the walls, finally forcing the Gondorians back. Speaking of forcing the Gondorians back, Angmar now actually pushing out of the settlement, although this probably is to their detriment. The Gondorians trying to pounce on this minor mistake and kill off this pocket of Angmar resistance. Maybe give them a way into the settlement here from the south. I mean, the manpower over here is definitely dwindling for the Gondorians, and you can see now Sin has moved his cavalry back over to here. Let's see how Froggy's getting on here on the eastern gate. I mean, defeat still seems certain, and again, the problem is just that he's sort of moved in aggressively, but he's left himself wide open to enemy skirmishers here. Morroquendi Bow is able to shoot into the side of them, and of course, the problem here, the poison arrows, morale debuff, a lot of these units are wavering as a result. They're in a bad position here. Gondor and Froggy could end up being the first player to lose almost all of his army, and that's a very, very efficient defence from the defenders if that is indeed the case. Barding Herd holding well in conjunction with the Morroquendi Pikes. The Barrow-wights are also here, meaning that Gondor are not really going to be able to deal with this defence quickly at all. Earls of Dale and Morroquendi Bow, you can see the Gondorians trying to engage them in melee and actually succeeding, but even fully upgraded, the Gondor infantry are not as strong as the Earls of Dale. It's one of those areas where Dale, I think, have got a little bit of an underrated unit. The Earls of Dale are a very, very good unit of line infantry.
Only half the enemy force remains.
More Gondorians pouring in. Only half the enemy force remains, and I would imagine that is Númenor, because Númenor, of course, will have a tiny army. 2 trebuchets, a lot of cavalry. Not an awful lot going on there. The Númenorian cavalry, I think, is heading off back to the, well, around to the northern edge of the settlement. You can see here, finally it looks as though Gondor is going to make some progress here against Angmar in the south. But it will come at a pretty grievous cost, and of course, the defenders can just cycle back to this wall over here. Still that trebuchet as well. So, yeah, there's the Númenorian cavalry. They're coming around to over here, but I mean, over here, I mean, the Gondorians have formed up a massive army, but they have a very thin bridge to try and traverse. They are making some progress now, though, pushing Angmar back. You can see there's some Guardians of Khan Doom that have been committed to the front line. But it is very slow and steady progress that Gondor are making here in the north. I'm not sure whether it's going to be enough. Trying their best here, but I mean, it's a lot of casualties that Gondor are going to have to make up here as the battle goes along. I mean, Gondor are doing their best, and actually victory seems certain for them now that there isn't any sort of ranged fire that they're under. They're trying to push through, but I mean, I think the time for pushing through is past. I don't think they have the numbers anymore. They have at least managed to engage the Morroquendi bows in melee, and have actually done a very good job at killing them off as well. There goes Eclipse's general, right in the gatehouse. Keldon River Patrol charging into melee to shore up that part of the line. The Swordmasters of Esgaroth are also coming over here to try and deal with some Gondorians. They're shooting point blank here into the Gondor infantry, which is enough to make them shaken, wavering even. But yeah, with the Swordmasters here, it might be enough to make them break as well. Swordmaster, of course, very high base damage, nice defensive skill as well. And there they go, yeah. So this could be the end for Froggy. Again, he has fought valiantly, but unfortunately the situation that he was in, exposed to all those skirmishers, was always going to be really, really harsh on his push. And now with the Swordmasters of Esgaroth and the Earls coming around from the rear of his army, I don't really fancy his chances, although the Swordmasters may be turning around to think about trying to hold the position against the Gondorians that are coming into the settlement now, as Eclipse does start to make progress. He may have lost his general, but he has been victorious, finally. All of these arrow towers still doing their thing. Some Guardians of Khan Doom and some Barding Herd forming up another front line. Be interesting to see how Gondor decide to try and make their way through the settlement here. The lowest portion of the settlement. Meanwhile, I would imagine that things are going very much the same over here. You can see that Gondor, again, slow but steady progress. Axemen of Lasarnak, Gondor Spearmen on the front line, obviously the armour piercing helpful, but again, slow progress is the key here. Like, their allies in the south have really taken a bit of a beating while they've been doing this, and again, I'm very surprised that 3 of the Gondorian armies are here in the north, like I said before. Like, I think it would have made more sense for Darkwolf to attack the settlement from this angle, because it would have stretched the defence on this layer massively. As it is, though, Gondor have made their choice, and now they're going to have to stick with it. You can see here some Gondorians, Citadel Guard, trying to help bail out Froggy, but the Swordmasters of Esgaroth have turned around, and they will hold the line with those Zweihanders. And they are, well, they outnumber the Citadel Guard by a small amount, but with Axemen of Lasarnak, I mean, eventually the Swordmasters of Esgaroth are going to be overwhelmed through sheer numbers. The Morroquendi bows, I think, are going to turn around, I think, having already dealt some pretty grievous blows to Froggy. Although Froggy, victory seems certain. A lot of his army is shaken, but I mean, he might be able to fight his way through this. His army will be in tatters even if he does. But I mean, it does go to show the resilience of the Gondorian infantry, I think. The fact that they're still fighting hard here against the Dalian defence. You can see over here. I'd be interested to see who wins this particular fight, actually. I think, yeah, the Citadel Guard with their armour, I think they are just the unit of higher quality overall. And of course the Swordmasters don't have the AP that would be needed to crack that tough Gondorian shell. Especially not with additional support as well from these Axemen coming forward, and especially not the pikes, so these Swordmasters have an ever more limited shelf life. There are some ranged hits coming, however. The Morroquendi bows being attacked by the Axeman, but can't imagine. Well, I mean, there's some of. What is this? That's weird. Didn't think any were up on the wall. Well, these Morroquendi bows are being attacked by the Pelagia Marines, and ultimately they have been victorious. Pelagia Marines are not that good in melee. Morroquendi bows certainly the stronger, heavy elven archers that they are. They'll need to make use of the Morroquendi while they still have them, because they're going to be losing them, I think, in the hotfix. and they will become Dorwinian exclusive. That is not a good sight, however. You can see that more and more of Froggy's army is starting to lose stomach for the fight. As the Barrow Wights, obviously they're a fear-causing unit, the Barrow Wights, which is certainly not helping matters. And there's not much, honestly, of the defence left over here, but I think they can be very pleased with their day's work against the Gondorians in this part of the settlement. You can see one of the towers there has been destroyed. Morroquendi bows now charging into melee in support of the Earls, maybe trying to help kill off these guards of Osgiliath. But, I mean, surely it's only a matter of time at this point. I mean, the Swordmasters of Esgaroth victory is almost a certainty. That's interesting. Fighting hard here, these brave men of the lake, even if they have joined the forces of evil. Doing well. Meanwhile, still not even in through the gate here in the back. The Witcher-Realm Blackguard have now joined the front line, sort of forcing the Gondorian hand to commit yet more forces forward. But I mean, Gondor's still not into the settlement here in the north. Just committing forward more Axemen of Lysaonak to try and make that happen. But with the Witcher-Realm Blackguard there, it's unlikely to be a speedy process even now. There's still Barrow Wights in there as well. And that is a chain rout from Froggy. So ultimately the defence was able to hold, and Eclipse was not able to save Froggy in time, unfortunately for both of them, because that does mean that Eclipse is going to be pretty isolated here in the south. And it may allow the defenders to try and hunt down his army before turning their full attention to the Horde in the north. Vanguard of King Elisar making their way over here as well. Still some Citadel Guard and Lothian Honor Guard. So I mean, Eclipse is not going to go quietly into that good night either, but I really don't feel as though he's in a particularly fantastic position to go on and make something happen here either. I mean, you can just tell from the amount of forces that just aren't here. Actually, some Raven Helms of Caer Andros here trying to munch into the side of the Barding Herd. The Barding Herd finally realising they're being attacked and turning around to face the Raven Helms with those halberds. And the Barding Herd, they should probably just chase them down. I mean, Eclipse at this point is certainly the prey. Dale sending over more of those units there. You can see the Athala Rangers and Morroquendi bows shooting into Eclipse's army. The poison arrows, of course, again, that morale malus that they inflict could be a very, very important part of this fight. I mean, it already has been against Froggy, to be honest with you, with those sections of his army breaking before he would have wanted them to. And there goes the Witcher-Realm Inquisitors as well. I'm not sure what they're doing. I mean, they could just try and pad their kill count, I suppose, by feasting on the fleeing units of Froggy. Not many Barding Herd left. I mean, to be fair to Froggy, I mean, he almost won that. In a very disadvantageous position, he almost managed to crack that defence, but ultimately Eclipse wasn't able to reinforce him in time. Those Swordmasters of Esgaroth holding up for long enough. And you never know, I mean, the defenders are always at a pretty significant disadvantage in this kind of battle, so it could be those kinds of moments which give the defenders the advantage they need to go on and win. More hits. Citadel Guard advancing forward. Keldarin River Patrol now getting in the way. They won't last too long against a professional Gondorian outfit. They do still have those Athala Rangers though. Pretty devastating unit. Keldarin River Patrol though, certainly one of the poorest units Dale can field in melee. With those arming swords and those padded gambesons that they were. Meanwhile, they're just about inside the settlement, so Gondor, finally there's a bit of movement over here. Bloodbath McGrath has sent forward some of his Barding Herd to potentially close that gap. Forward comes another unit of Trolls of Gundabad. So they're going to wade in here. I mean, I'm not sure I'd actually recommend that. There's a lot of Axemen of Lysaonak in there, as well as some Raven Helms. Actually, no, those are Marksmen of Caer Andros, but even so, exactly the sort of units. If a unit is wielding a weapon two-handed, that's probably a pretty good sign that they're going to be fairly decent against Trolls, but this could also be enough to break up this Gondorian assault. And, I mean, yet again, force Gondor to reconsider. They only have one avenue of attack. Here comes some upgraded Guardians of Calm Doom as well, holding this front line down. So still, not a lot of progress here from Gondor in the north. They're very lucky that the gatehouses don't have oil. Meanwhile, how's Eclipse's army getting along? In Lothian Honor Guard marching along the walls Yeah, the Athala Rangers and the Morroquendi Bows at this point I think are going to retreat. The Keldwyn River Patrol and the Barrow Wights going to be left behind as a rear guard, just to stall the Gondorians from their inevitable victory over here. And they are going to pull back to the next layer, but huge damage has been dealt to the southern assault. Froggy is gone. And Eclipse, I'm not sure how much longer he's going to last either. A Númenórean Trebuchet crew, very bravely trying to take on Raven Helms of Caer Andros. Arrows still being loosed from the towers. There goes our Pharisol. So they have been trying to harass some units in the north, perhaps? Yes, they were. But finally, Sin's buzzing around with his cavalry has been brought to an end, but certainly worthwhile to bring them because the damage they dealt was very, very significant. But still, this is where most of the action is happening. Eclipse is really just clinging to life with his army here, but he's still something which the defenders need to consider. He has some good units left, Nimlothian Honour Guard, Vanguard of King Elisar, some Citadel Guard are in there as well, so it's a small army, but it's made up of some of Gondor's finest infantry units. So it's not as if they can send any old rubbish after them and expect them to win. Those arrow towers still doing their thing, Morroquendi Bows. Trebuchet crew still fighting over here. I'm not sure what they're trying to do. Maybe just be an annoyance, because they are surrounded now by Raven Helms and by Axemen. They're actually shaking both of these units. It would be hilarious if the Trebuchet crew was able to prevail here, thanks to the towers, but I somewhat doubt it. The Trebuchet crew is not going to be able to stand up in melee to either of these two units, let alone both of them. Really starting to fall now. Still just getting in the way, making sure Gondor can regroup fully, making life as difficult as possible for them. Meanwhile, yeah, you can see here the trolls very much on their last legs, but so too is the Gondorian assault. They laid down their life for the cause, and now the Guardians of Khârn Dûm are going to be able to form up that front line again with their jet black armour and large kite shields. Still the Barding Herd ready to come in as well. The Witchram Hammer Guard have come down here as well, so I mean, I think the defenders, they're not daft. They know that if this is the best place to hold the attackers, because it's a single, very narrow choke point. If they were to let them in, there's two roads they could take to the town centre, and they could also potentially try and save Eclipse, which would be the last thing they would want. So sending forward more and more reinforcements down here to hold this choke point is absolutely the right thing to do, to my mind. Let's see what's going on with Eclipse. 24 Fountain Guard. The Trebuchet crew is still alive. Well, there's both Trebuchet crews are down here. This one, however, is getting... There it goes. Finally killed. And that guy's about to get bisected by an axe. And there he goes. Eclipse is still just sort of waiting here, trying to shelter from the towers, which are still just firing into him. Obviously, this is pretty much the sum total of his army at this point, in addition to those two battered units of Raven Helms and Axeman. So, it'll be interesting to see how he proceeds with this, because like the defenders know at this point they don't need to send forward a massive force to deal with him, but you know, they will need some elite units at the very least. Some units like the Morroquendi Pikes wouldn't hurt either, but they can afford to spend most of their effort on dealing with the large Gondorian army to the north. And of course that's bad news for Gondor, because I still think they probably need to reconsider at this point. Well, what is this going on here? There's some the Telsars, there's the Witchers, and here they are. Oof. I mean, to be fair, the Witchers are using their ammunition on Gondor militia archers of all things. Gondor are probably all too happy to accept that loss. Could be considered as a bit wasteful from Angmar, but maybe Angmar are feeling so confident they just want to give Gondor a fright by killing off yet more of their units more quickly. It's also possible maybe they want the ones of Minas Ithil. Still this front line holding, the Guardians of Khârn Dûm doing their thing. Barding Herd, there are the Witchers retreating, having inflicted yet more casualties on the Gondorian northern expedition here. Another unit of Axemen of Lasarnak being committed to the front line. All this AP must be adding up. I mean, they have been able to push Angmar back on the back of the Axemen of Lasarnak here, You know, they've managed to kill off the trolls with them, but it's been very slow going. And there's still those Barding Herd, which at any moment could swivel around and get involved as well, and with their phalanx things get even more tricky for Gondor. As soon as the Hammer Guard, well, now the Hammer Guard are committing themselves, and that's a problem for Gondor, because all of, you know, one thing that you can say about Gondor is AP is always going to be useful against them, and the Hammer Guard are some of the best armor-piercing infantry in the game. And so that will force Gondor once again to maybe think about committing forward some more elite units. We're at more or less the halfway point of this battle now, and it's still anyone's game. Like, again, the defenders have it all to do in a 3v5, and I'd say that they've probably had the better of the battle so far. But you never know when the manpower of the defenders can just start to collapse, and then, like dominoes, things can fall, and especially considering how relatively small the Numenor army is. There is hope from that perspective that, you know, Gondor can just bide their time, continue to fight in this manner, and then eventually the defenders will start to collapse. We shall see. Here you can see Gondor trying to push further forwards. I mean, I'm not entirely sure why, because the Hammer Guard are just going to batter them, and if they continue to push further forwards, they're even going to incur the wrath of the Barding Herd as well. They're getting hit from afar. You can see there's some Athala Rangers from on high trying to finish this Gondorian assault. There's some routing in there from the Axemen of the Sarnak. There are the Witchers, once again getting up onto the walls. I mean, this may be why the Gondorians are none too eager to send forward big clumps of men, because they know that the Witchers can shoot them. But I mean, they don't have a choice. They chose to attack from this angle. They need reinforcements on the front line to keep this attack going. More Wardens of Minas Ithil. Fully upgraded Gondor spearmen marching across the bridge. I mean, this is the thing, like, Gondor can continue to send wave after wave of soldiers like this for quite some time and still not lose the battle for themselves. The defenders don't have that kind of luxury, so they need to hope that their manpower can really do the work here. The Witcher Hammer Guard, of course, will against Gondor. I imagine they're going to get a very healthy amount of kills by battle's end. Gondor trying to form up yet another assault as the Gondor infantry joins the front line, but I mean, it's been a pretty torrid time for Gondor in this battle so far. All they can hope is that the dawn will come. Over here, meanwhile, a bit of a counter-attack going on here by the defenders, which is bold. I mean, the Barrow-wights coming out, but the Barrow-wights are not going to be able to kill off these Gondorians all on their lonesome. They're going to need some support. There are some Barding Herd in the background there as well, but again, based on the elite nature of some of these Gondorians, will that be enough? We'll see. The lamella-clad Northmen getting downhill and getting their halberds down, or bardishes I suppose they would be. Still some Morroquendi bows up on the wall over here, but only 31 of them, and there's not really any reinforcements close by. I mean, if they're... yeah, here we go. So they are going to try and surround this Gondorian army, but again, I mean, they're going to surround them, but yeah, they have ammunition still, so the Morroquendi bows are going to try and shoot Eclipse to death, and then maybe charge into melee and try and deal with what's left of them hand to hand. Not a bad idea, this, honestly, because I mean, the Gondorians will have to answer this somehow, because I mean, with Barding Herd and Barrow-wights from the front, like, they are not going to be able to kill off these units in time. Eclipse in a very difficult spot here. The Morroquendi bows, they're going to have to deal with some Axemen of Lasarnak, but I mean, I can't help but imagine that just a single volley of poison arrows would be enough to, if not kill them, make them rout and not come back. They're going to charge in here, but in melee they're going to lose here to the elves. It's a brave move, but perhaps a foolish one. They may be able to get a few kills off the charge, but then they'll meet their end at the end of those Avari glaives. And there they go, almost immediately. There's their Citadel Guard as well, forming up a rear guard. I mean, the more men they pull off the front line here, the more likely it is that the Barding Herd and the Barrow-wights will beat them from the front. So if they can finish off Eclipse with just these 3 units, again, that's something else which the defenders can feel very proud of themselves for accomplishing. Morroquendi bow is going to try and shoot into the Citadel Guard. This will, of course, mean that they become shaken. Heavily armoured and heavily shielded though, so this probably won't be enough to kill them, but with how many losses they've already taken, the general's already dead, maybe they will break under this poison arrow fire, and even if they don't, they will be softened up enough for the Morroquendi bows to kill them in melee at the very least. Yeah, this is the end for Eclipse. A unit of dismounted Earls of Dale are also going to be joining the fray. It's all over for them, unfortunately. Again, much like Froggy, he can just sort of sit here and try and kill as many as he can, and then hope that his allies to the north can make his sacrifice worth it in the end. Those Morroquendi bows, they're going to get up onto the wall and shoot into the back of here, because you can see that, you know, with the vanguard of King Elisar, there's also Nimlothian Honor Guard in here. The defensive line is starting to struggle. The Barding Herd and the Barrow-wights will only hold up for so long, so they are going to need the support here of the Earls and the Morroquendi bows. The Earls are going to have to deal with the vanguard of King Elisar now as well. Not entirely sure what these Morroquendi bows are doing. The unit is a bit stretched out, so a bit of a pathfinding error here. And you can see here that Gondor trying to sort of reposition themselves. The Earls holding up well. Gondor are going to try and get into a position where the Morroquendi bows can hurt them. Meanwhile, there's a massive push going on here. Gondor, well, I say that, it's just routing units. A lot of routing units actually. Gondor spearmen are routing through the settlement. I'm not entirely sure how they've managed that, but managed it they have. But having said that, over here, Gondor coming forward in numbers, and finally they have an opportunity here to get through. And they need to take this, they need to send forward more men. The Hammer Guard are over here, there's still the Barding Herd, there's still some Guardians of Carn-Dû, but finally this defence is in tatters, and Gondor can now try and pour into the settlement and carry that momentum maybe all the way to the town centre. This is going to be risky. There goes the catapult shots. Absolutely brutal. Obviously with very little in the way of allied troops over there, the catapult is now free to try and do as much damage to this Gondorian push as they can. However, oh, and they actually rout the Citadel Guard as well. There's only a unit of dismounted Earls of Dale though, standing in the way, and they're already shaken as a result of friendly fire. The Athala Rangers could also get some brutal body-piercing shots off if they still have ammunition. Gondor trying to push through, and they need to. Ooh. Another devastating hit there, right into the middle of the Gondorian army. But finally Gondor have some movement. There's light at the end of the tunnel perhaps for Gondor here. Javelins being utilised as another unit of Swordmasts of Esgaroth getting in the way of the catapult, and Gondor, the more losses like this that they take, the more difficult it's going to be in the late game, because they are taking massive losses. Catapult's going to try and get away. I'm not sure whether this is all that worth it, to be honest with you, because I think they are going to get caught regardless. The Swordmasts of Esgaroth are not going to hold back the Gondorian horde for too long. There's also these Athala Rangers which are just getting in and amongst the action, so they must be out of ammunition. The Pelagia Marines doing some damage there to the Swordmasts of Esgaroth. The catapult, I think maybe it is going to be able to get away actually. With the Athala Rangers here, it's going to be fairly difficult for the Gondorians to get a cohesive force up here. And those Citadel Guard are broken as well, so yeah, not bad at all. Warns of Minas Ithil from Gondor running around all over the place. There's a lot of routing units, so chaos is really set in this fight. Meanwhile,
Our men have slain the enemy general. Without him, his troops will lose their will to fight.
Eclipse
Only
still
half the
fighting
enemy
hard,
force remains.
and it may be that trying to be stingy over here and not finishing off Eclipse with a more comprehensive force could end up costing the defenders here. Because they've maybe taken a few more losses than they would have liked. They should still win. The Barding Herd are pretty much gone. The Earls will be damaged, the Morroquendi bows will be damaged, the Barrow Whites will be damaged. I mean, they will have units they can retreat to the town centre, of course, but hasn't gone perhaps as smoothly as the defenders would have liked over here. So Eclipse not going down without a fight, which is good to see. But ultimately the southern attack will be thrown off eventually. That much is clear. It's just whether or not those in the north can take advantage of this. Mountain Guard marching forward, the Gondorian army. It's a scary sight when you look at it like that, because you don't often see a Gondorian force of that size and quality. The Dalian Royal Guard here, I'm not entirely sure what they're doing. They've been caught by some sort of melee unit and have absolutely monstered them. But I don't know what they're doing. Like, they must have used up their ammunition here. But I mean, charging in like this is suicidal. Yeah, and I think Bloodbath McGrath now realises that they need to get out of there. This is a unit which could be absolutely invaluable defending the town centre with how good they are in melee as heavy swordsmen. Athelian Rangers trying to make their retreat as uncomfortable as possible.
Our army's running from the field.
Yeah, and I just saw that green triangle disappear from the map, and there we go. Eclipse and Froggy, both their armies at this point have fallen, but just look at the carnage, especially over here on the eastern gate. Neither side is coming out of this looking too pretty, but certainly the defenders, I think they'll take a good deal of heart from how they dealt with this situation here in the south, because they certainly had the better end of it. And now the defenders can focus their full attention on dealing with the 3 Gondorian armies that marched in over the northern bridge. The towers, of course, continuing to poke and prod at Gondor as they move through the settlement. Mountain Guard. A lot of Gondorians continuing to march towards the TC, but I'll be interested to see actually how Gondor handle this, you know, because over here, this is a more direct route to the town centre. You go through a gate up here and then you're essentially there, whereas over here, you need to march up and around here. I mean, Dale is, you know, much like a real castle, it sort of funnels you around certain ways to make life more difficult for you as the attackers. Obviously, you have to go through all of these towers as well, which won't do absolutely grievous damage to you. But they will still poke and prod away at you, and, you know, if the battle is decided by a matter of a dozen or so men, then the towers will have done their part. There's some Remena Abarim up here. I'm not really sure why. Like, there's no real need to guard these walls. There's also this other wall around here which you can utilise as well, one of those little nooks in the city. Gondor starting to form up Athelian Rangers over here. Got here a catapult. Mathala Rangers moving to engage the marksmen of Caer Andros, which were opening up on the defenders just then. Getting shanked. I mean, here the marksmen of Caer Andros are absolutely the more accomplished unit in melee. Rangers have got decent melee defense, but they don't do a lot of damage in melee. And also they're just being shot at point blank. So I think they're just going to retreat here. Maybe try and form up a better defensive line. The Morroquendi Pikes getting shot, they need to get out of there as well. Not the sort of unit you want to lose to archers in this situation. So this is an area where the attackers can now make up a lot of the ground that they arguably lost earlier. Because obviously when the defenders are retreating, trying to form up another defence, that's when the attackers can get a lot of kills as the defenders are starting to scramble. And so it may turn out to be here. Catapult's still trying to retreat, obviously. Non-troll catapults are so slow. Blackshot Dragon Slayers as well. I wonder what they're firing at. Some veterans of Osgiliath making their way forward. I mean, Blackshots don't have a huge amount of ammunition. What ammunition you have, you want to really use on certain kinds of units. Veterans of Osgiliath are good, but maybe not as good as you would want. Only 17 Warns of the White Tower as well, so maybe you could say that they're already plenty weak enough. As we make our way over to the other end of the settlement here. The Gondorians still just forming up, Fountain Guard at the front. There is still this gate, of course, which they need to bash down. Do they actually have any rams, would be my question. They do. Dark Wolf is going to be trundling slowly up the hill. It's not often you'll see Nimlothian Honor Guard pushing a ram, but here they are. Must be hard work lugging that thing up this hill with its riveted metallic wheels. Fountain Guard. Again, a bit of a lull in proceedings here as the Gondorians get ready to make another push. Bit of a mini skirmish phase going on here as the Morroquendi bows try and cover the retreat of all of their units. It will cost them their lives though, because the marksmen of Carandros with their armour, the veterans of Osgiliath as well with their armour and shields, are going to be the much more accomplished unit at skirmishing with other archers, and the poison arrows in this case will not be enough to break the Gondorians. The Gondorians of course in the ascendancy now. Fountain Guard moving forward, so again they're just trying to throw these units which are already super depleted in front of the Gondorians so they can hit them on the retreat. There are the Blackshot Dragon Slayers. Warns of the White Tower over here. Some Earls of Dale charging in, of course. In this situation they're going to be biting off more than they can chew. Warns of the White Tower, by far the superior unit. Oh, excuse me. There is a Gondorian general in there, I can see here. Isildur. Gondor militia archers moving around. They still have a bit of ammunition actually, which will be very useful going into a situation like this. The tower's still going to be doing work here for the defenders as well. So that's going to be good again. Like I said, not a lot of kills that they get, but they do add up in the long run, and Gondor have already taken a real beating in the early phases of this game, so they need to try and preserve as much of their army as they can here. Of course, numbers will be their friend as the battle goes along, you would imagine. The defenders, under normal circumstances in a 3v5, have got a real uphill struggle when it comes to total numbers. But especially here with the choice of Númenórean army, and even the good about the Angmar army, because of the amount of trolls that they brought, and elite units. So, it'll be interesting to see how this works out. But Númenor, we haven't really seen any of their infantry yet, because they've saved it all for the end. So, Seafarers of Nindamos, Pharazim Swordmasters and Royal Legion of Armenelos, these are the sorts of units which Gondor will still have to deal with. Poison arrows being loose there into the Citadel Guard. The Dalian archers, especially the Morroquendi, have been a very effective unit so far in the battle. I imagine that they've managed to rack up quite a kill count, but also the breaking that they caused earlier on, very important. There's still some Dalian Paladins left, a very nice unit to have against Gondor with that AP that they have from their Great Maces. Here, the Pelagia Marines have now taken over ram pushing duties. They are now going to be able to batter down this gate and open up yet another route into the town centre. Just having a look at these armies as they form up here, seeing what's left. I mean, mostly going to be Númenor, with a little bit of support from Dale, I'd imagine. There's not really much of anything of Angmar left. It's possible that one of the announcer already said that Angmar maybe has fled from the field, which is possible. I mean, Angmar was front and centre on both fronts, so we'll see. The fleeing noises. Still some Earls of Dale. No, Angmar's still just about alive. 7 Guardians of Khan Dûm. The Athala Rangers, they still have their bows out, so they're going to try and get out of here. Morroquendi bows continuing to try and skirmish with Gondor, which is brave to do. They have a perfect shot, to be fair, down into the veterans of Osgiliath, but like I said, shielded, armoured. It's a very tough target to try and skirmish with. The Blackshot Dragon Slayer is going to try and escape as well. Having a look at how the rear guard is going down here. The Barrow Wights here getting in the way, as they usually do. It's like trying to move through treacle. Axemen of Lasarnak. Pelagia Marines are over here as well. Yeah, so I mean, Gondor are just going to swamp over the Barrow Wights, and then they're going to make their way to attacking the main gate. There's actually some Vanguard of King Elisar getting maybe a little bit further ahead of themselves, but yeah. And then Gondor will have to form up once again. Do they even have a ram? Because they're going to need a ram. They have a ram over on the other side, but they're going to need to attack through both gates, I think. Gondor, though, things were looking pretty dicey for them earlier. But they have fought their way back into real contention here. Eclipse and Froggy's sacrifice may not be in vain after all, as they pour through yet another gatehouse. I really like the complexity of Dale as a city, to be honest. A lot of work was put into all of the pathways along the walls, and just overall it's a very nicely constructed city. Another one of WK's masterpieces. Remen and Nardukadar, Seafarers of Nindamos, also here. Remen and Nardukadar and the Citadel Guard, of course, very, very similar units. Armour-piercing spear versus armour-piercing spear. Very expensive, the both of them as well. There are the Naru Naaru Sentinels ready to commit themselves when they are needed. There's also still the Adunheim Shadow Bows, which have ammunition. It's always a bad sign when the defenders have got a unit of rangers in the back pocket for the late game. There's Royal Legion as well. I mean, like, the fact that Numenor are the ones that have sort of managed to maintain most of their infantry for the late game is good from the defenders' point of view, I think, because they obviously have got a lot of quality. And it remains to be seen whether Gondor can overcome that quality. They have the numbers to do so, and they have a lot of units themselves, like the Fountain Guard, which Numenor may find it quite difficult to deal with. Let's see. Dale does seem to be a map which can throw up some very, very good battles indeed, and here you can see, like Fire and Ice, the Citadel Guard and the Remen and Nardukadar continue to slam against one another. Seafarers of Nindamos. Pharazim Swordmasters as well, which is a very nice unit to have in the late game as well. Still the Dalian Paladin, so Dale. They've even got the Dalian Catapult. I'm not sure how much ammunition that thing still has left. It didn't seem to actually shoot too many times into the Gondorian blob for how many kills it got, but still, the crew is definitely depleted after its harrowing experience at the hands of the Gondorian archers. I think they're just waiting for a ram to make its way up here, aren't they? I would assume. They only have one ram left? Yes, they must, because they're using the same ram that they had before, and they're having to wheel it right round to the other side. Very unfortunate from an attacking perspective, because I mean it means they can't really start the assault in earnest yet. The Citadel Guard are starting to really struggle as well, because they're going uphill, of course. They've already been fighting, so they're already winded. Meanwhile, the Remen and Nardukadar, they're just warmed up, and also they have support nearby. The towers are also going to be lending them a bit of a hand, so the Citadel Guard going to lose this fight, unfortunately for Gondor. And that's yet another unit which is down the drain, essentially. Ooh, and there go the Seafarers of Nindamos, deciding that the time is now. They're just going to throw a nice sharp volley into the unit of supporting Citadel Guard, and that's a lot of damage. Obviously we are well aware at this point of how damaging the Seafarers can be. Not a lot of ammunition, but of course they could be just as valuable here for trying to plug gaps in melee as the Gondorian assault ratchets into high gear. Royal Legion. There's also the Blackshot Dragon Slayers, another very nice unit to have. Here are the Gondorians. Actually, the gate has just been opened. That may have been intentional from the defenders, just to get things going a little bit more quickly, although maybe not, because I mean from a defensive point of view you kind of want to focus on one engagement at a time. Remen and Nardukadar moving in to assist the Dalian front lines, so the Dalian Paladins getting their hands dirty right away here with those big maces. Seafarers of Nindamos throwing those javies. Oof, right into the heart of that Gondorian force there, and even the Calderon River Patrol was able to deal some very serious damage to Froggy's army, so imagine what the Seafarers of Nindamos can do. Already the Gondorian force is looking a little bit thin on the ground. Fortunately they do have reinforcements which they are going to be able to send forwards. Not a lot of infantry though, a lot of this is archers. could be Gondor's undoing from this angle here. Especially when they're up against units like Dalian Paladins and Pharazim Swordmasters. I mean, you can't just have any old garbage. And that's a terrible thing for Gondor as well, because the gate has slammed shut behind them. So they're now stuck. I'm not sure whether the Rangers can actually get through there. But that would be hilarious. Like, they've been let in, and then the defenders slam shut the gate behind them so they can't reinforce them, so they're just here to be exterminated. I'm not sure that's the sort of thing you can do intentionally with how gates open and close, but still. The Gondorians in real trouble over here, and they can't really attack from this angle over here either, but I mean, they kind of have to here, Gondor. They're coming forward with Citadel Guard again, but I think just a big force is needed. I think the defenders are in the ascendancy here. I think they're looking good. Ones at the White Tower and Nimlothian Honor Guard are in here trying to make something happen, but they are in a very ugly situation. You can see up here that some Gondorians managed to get up onto the walls, the Marksmen of Caer Andros, but they're good in melee, but they find themselves facing down the Dalian Royal Guard. And they too are outmatched here. I'm a big fan of the Marksmen of Caer Andros, but of course against the General's Bodyguard unit, especially being supported as they are. There's the Athala Rangers. They're also, yeah, they're being shot by Ranger fire as well, which is no bueno for them. The Marksmen of Caer Andros are going to get cut down pretty quickly here. Arrows flying over the wall, but of course relatively inaccurate. The damage they do is going to be highly minimal. Axemen of Basarnak doing their best on the front line, of course, but not really a unit with longevity in mind, as most Axemen aren't. Their armour makes them tougher, but I'm not really sure that's what's required here. More arrows flying over the wall, hitting the Naruna Iru Royal Guard this time. The Athelian Rangers shooting point blank into them, I think. No, they're actually shooting down there. The Gondorian assault is starting a little bit more in earnest over here now, but with Naruna Iru Sentinels and now Blackshot Dragon Slayers on the front line as well. Although I think the Blackshots are going to peel off a little bit so they're not being hit by those Ranger bolts. Or arrows, I should say. Gondor Militia Archers and Veterans of Osgiliath doing their best, but the Naruna Iru Royal Guard here, again, another really strong archer in melee. And Gondor under the cosh here. Men of Nardukadar backed up by the Seafarers now, obviously using their limited ammunition, now charging into melee, pulling out those axes well within the final 10,000 frames at this point. Yeah, and the defenders looking pretty good for the win here. Romana Bawabarim still here, taking hits, but yeah, I think I feel pretty good at throwing my weight behind a defender victory here. Dalian Royal Guard with the support of those Athala Rangers cleaning up those Marksmen of Caer Andros pretty quickly. Naruna Iru Royal Guard actually being forced back a little bit by the Veterans of Osgiliath, maybe trying to give the Athelian Rangers a bit of room to breathe. Fountain Guard on the front line, defeat seems certain. Athelian Rangers, I think Gondor are just sort of, their manpower is dwindling too much for them to make any kind of comeback in this battle. I could be wrong, but I do feel very confident at this point that the defenders are going to be able to win, just because of the quality of what Numenor has left in particular. Very nice front line indeed. You can see there that Gondor trying to get some Pelargir Marines into position to maybe try and use some javelins on something like the Naruna Iru Sentinels. Dunheim Shadow Bows. There's the Blackshot Dragon Slayers as well, who are just sort of poking and prodding the Fountain Guard from the side, which is really not helping matters for Gondor. That's brutal though, slamming the gates closed as Gondor sent their entire infantry force in was, again, like I said, it's not the sort of thing you can do purposely, I don't think, but that is so brilliant. And that ultimately, I think, was the final nail in Gondor's coffin, because they needed to keep this assault going. by funneling in even just the archers that were out of ammunition. They needed to keep up the pressure over here, and they just were not permitted to do that. Pharazim Swordmasters taking some hits, but of course they have a shield value, which is very nice for them. Not much, but in addition to their multiple HP and very high armor values, they are going to be just fine taking that kind of inaccurate archer fire. Veterans of Osgiliath still fighting hard up on the walls, as you would expect from a unit like them. Citadel Guard are sort of moving backwards, I think, seeing the fact that they really don't stand a chance against this absolutely brutal Numenor phalanx. Going to continue to march forward here, Numenor. Athelian Rangers being caught in melee. I mean, this is an opportunity for those Pelagia Marines to do some damage. But again, they're not exactly a showstopper javelin. It's not like they're the Demons of the Desert who could just bisect this entire army with a couple of volleys. They are definitely just your run-of-the-mill javelins. Damaging as they can be, not exactly the heroes that Gondor need at this point. Nimlothian Honor Guard and Fountain Guard, but it is an uphill battle in every sense at this point for Gondor. Let's see here, there's still about him as well. I mean, just the quality of units that they still have left, and you can see there that the Gondorians sort of are they phasing through the gate? It's kind of difficult to tell. Not many Dalian Paladins left, but they've certainly given their life in service of the cause. The Remen and Ardukadar here in the late game have also proven to be an excellent centre to the defence. The armour piercing, the shield wall formation proving to be difficult for Gondor to overcome. Still units as well waiting in the wings. Gondor don't have all that much left. Gondor militia archers are routing. It really is just sort of ramming headfirst into a brick wall at this point for Gondor, but I mean, they may as well die fighting.
Our enemy our foes lost control of the city.
I wonder what makes the announcer do that. I wonder what sort of glitch that is. There's Darkwolf's general, just sort of hanging out, wondering, I wonder if maybe this was a bad idea to come here. Sauron may have been defeated, but it looks as though Angmar are going to take up that mantle. Aragorn will have to do better if he wants to achieve full victory, it seems. Not as if Gondor are going quietly into that good night either, though. There's still a decent chunk of time left to go in this fight. Blackshot Dragon Slayers over here. Naruna Iron Guard reforming. Obviously they've been in melee. Pretty hotly contested melee fight with the Veterans of Osgiliath up on the walls as well. And the Veterans of Osgiliath as swordsmen should have the advantage over the spears of the Naruna Iron Guard. But of course all the support the Numenorians were getting. Still the Athala Rangers continuing to tee off into that blob of Gondorian infantry. A real theme of this battle has been Gondor being put into really hideous situations but managing to last for a long time, which is a testament to how durable their infantry can be. There are the Bawabrim as well. Not a lot of ammunition on these lads, but I think at this point they can sense that if they can deliver some killer blows to Gondor at this point, they can put it beyond all doubt and then they can be the aggressors in this particular fight. Defeat is a distinct possibility. I really love the look of Numenor though. Like the unit models, there was a great job that was done on the Ravenna, especially. There's the Royal Legion of Armanelos, another fantastic looking unit I must say. With their brass armour. It's not exactly gold, it's sort of a duskier colour than all that. Fountain Guard forming up a Gondorian front line. There goes another Gondorian general. Fountain Guard doing their best. Victory seems certain for them at this point, but with all of this pressure that's bearing down upon them, somehow I don't think that that's going to be the case for too much longer. Here come the Pharazim Swordmasters as well, so the Numenor elites hounding Dark Dwarf's army back outside of the inner bailey. Here's the Dalian Royal Guard. Their blue capes to offset the Dalian Paladins' red capes. And the veterans of Osgiliath going to be the last ones left standing in this particular Gondorian assault. And their armour upgrade is certainly not going to be enough to save them in this particular situation. Against those great maces, and axes and swords. Dalian catapult being moved. And to be fair, I mean, the defenders don't have much left. Numenor have got like a decent chunk of their army. I don't know. Dalian Royal Guard getting in here. Veterans of Osgiliath, they don't go down easily, certainly, but I mean also as a sword and board unit they don't necessarily kill things in melee too quickly either. Paladins. Still some Abarim that could be sent in as well. The rest of the army, however, being filed off down here.
The enemy is no longer in command of the city.
Real grind fest. I mean, the Fountain Guard are going to be doing their best here, and they may be able to pull back a pretty decent sum of kills. But ultimately, I mean, it's Gondor had such a big deficit, and I think there are reasons for that. We'll go into that in the results screen, but it was definitely a well-fought fight from both sides. Very earnest, obviously a lot of aggression going on as well, like no one was being too conservative. There was none of this business with the with sort of trying to jink in and out with skirmishers, sort of beating about the bush as it were. Both sides were right in there. Victorious over here, I think. I mean, I suppose that this gate was just sort of, it is technically still open, it just looked like it's shut, but still, it's fun to sort of see like the Gondorians pile in and then suddenly the gate slams shut behind them. Warns of Minas Ithil having to deal with this counter-attack from the Numenorian infantry. The Boabarim also getting into position, presumably to shoot at the Palagir Marines, who still have ammunition actually. Throwing some javelins in there, doing some damage, so Gondor really making a fist of this here as the game enters its final stages. Again, like I said, the Palagir Marines, the damage they can do is decent, but you would imagine that it's not going to be, yeah, you can see here the Boabarim as well. The high damage AP missiles that they use causing the entire front row of the Palagir Marines to just melt before them. But like I said, the Palagir Marines are better used in a support for a fight that's still fairly even, rather than something which can be used to turn a fight that you're losing around. They're not really on the same sort of level as like the Seafarers, or the Dunedain Troll Slayers, or obviously something like the Demons of the Desert for damage. Demons of the Desert are so devastating. Boabarim here, teeing off into those Palagir Marines. And there they go, so this fight from the front gate of the central keep is now over, which just leaves this fight over here, which is going to be a bit of a grind fest, to be honest with you, with this amount of Fountain Guard, who in places are actually winning against stuff like Royal Legion of Armenelos and Pharazim Swordmasters. So that phalanx really does come in handy. There's Wardens of the White Tower in here as well, so it's certainly a high quality Gondorian last stand, to be sure. Boabarim. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's nothing left really over here. Dalian Royal Guard, I guess they're going to try and go right the way around and try and attack Gondor from the rear, but I'm not sure whether Gondor's going to last that long. I mean, we've got a little over 2,000 frames. Yeah, I think that's probably enough time for them to get over here, and of course, as soon as they get attacked from the rear, their phalanx becomes much less effective. And actually you can see here that Numenor at this point, not playing into Gondor's hands, just pushing in, buckling the Fountain Guard's formation. It has been costly, this, though, for Numenor, but ultimately it hasn't jeopardised their chances at winning the game at all. Let's see, Morroquendi bows still over here. Mostly back here is just archers. Some of them still have ammo, some of them don't. There's a single unit of Remena about him as well. So yeah, I mean, honestly, not an awful lot of men left for Numenor here at the back. I mean, Numenor are going to be the ones with units left. The Dalian Royal Guard as well, so Dale are just about still standing. Angmar have pretty much entirely spent themselves in defence of this city. About him are heading down here. They're just going to charge in another unit of high quality line infantry that Gondor are going to have to deal with. We've got there some routing Pelagia Marines. Fountain Guard are shaken. You know, again, it's a bad sign when the Fountain Guard are thinking of routing, as the Númenórean banners continue to push into the Gondorian ones. And this is a well-deserved victory from the defenders, I think. The way that they set out their defence was really very, very good. I think there were some issues with how the attackers decided to set up as well, which we'll talk a little bit more about in the results screen, but ultimately you can only fight what's in front of you from a defensive perspective, and the most important thing for the defenders to do in a 5v3 siege, I've noticed, is not to make any serious errors. Because if you do, it can be so difficult to recover from them. Because you're already at such a deficit that you need to make your units work as efficiently as possible.
Without their general, they may lose heart and flee.
And they didn't. They didn't make any errors here. They used their cavalry very, very nicely. They set up their lines as best they could. They knew when to pull back. When they did pull back, they didn't allow the attackers to take huge, great swaths out of their army. As we enter the final 1,000 frames here, it is going to be just about within 10%, constituting a close fight. And again, Gondor weren't a million miles away from winning this either. There are just a couple of things they could have done that would have resulted in victory for the Gondorians, I think. A lot of their units routing, running from the field.
Our foe has taken control of the city.
Pharazim Swordmasters pushing forward. That's pretty much the end of this Gondorian
Control of the city.
assault over here. Are they still fighting? Ah, there's one Gondorian, one Warden of the White Tower, surrounded by Blackshot Dragon Slayers and a single Númenórean officer. Surely it's only a matter of time before they just butcher him. There they go. Victory for them, so I'm actually wondering what's left. It must be something down here. Ah, it is. It's Pelagia Marines. They're going to get shot point blank by the Dalian Royal Guard. Their morale actually improved from wavering to shaken them, which is strange. I mean, they're not going. The morale is certainly not going to be improved by the Royal Guard engaging them in melee, but some Pelagia Marines from Darkmoor 44, the last unit for Gondor left standing. But not for much longer, of course. And there they go. Well fought win. And again, like I said, I think the biggest mistake that the Gondorians made, like I think it might be fairly easy to point at Froggy and Eclipse here for losing the fight in the south, but that wasn't their fault, and that's because I don't understand why the Gondorians went with 3 armies going across the most narrow entrance into the settlement. Like, I know Gondor do well in choke pointy fights, but you really don't want to be giving the defenders a narrow fight in a siege where you have such a numbers advantage. You want to try and stretch them as much as you can, which is why if I think it was Dark Wolf actually who started off in this deployment zone here, he should have attacked the settlement from over here. That would have relieved the pressure on Eclipse and Froggy immensely. It would have stretched the defenders more. It would have forced them to pull back sooner, I think, and then obviously on the retreat you can do much more damage to the defenders, and that would have led to Gondor, I think, having a much easier time of it. As it was, I think that the way that they decided to do things played into the defenders' hands a little bit. It's not like they played poorly, I should hasten to add. It's just that it was their choice of tactics, I think, which ended up costing them here more so, because they played well. I mean, they did end up forcing their way through that very nasty Angmar defence full of trolls and Hammerguard witches without taking too much damage, so that's to their credit, but I just feel as though that was kind of the wrong thing to do overall anyway. Well played to the defenders though, very, very well done. Dale's archers obviously absolutely monstered this battle. Angmar did very well at holding the lines, and then of course Númenor's quality in the late game was far too much for the battered Gondorians to try and overcome. So yeah, I guess the new evil rises in the north. Let's have a look and see what did the damage for the Gondorians overall. So Eclipse had by far the most kills, which is not too surprising because he went in. Obviously Froggy took a huge amount of damage and Eclipse was able to sort of kill off the units which spent themselves trying to kill Froggy. Nimlothi and Honor Guard, a few units breaking 100, including the elites, the Raven Helms, Fountain Guard, Citadel Guard doing okay. So yeah, the higher end units doing well, but unit of Gondor infantry breaking 200 kills. So that's obviously a sign that sort of basic infantry can do a job if it's in the right sort of fight. I mean, I assume that most of those kills would have been on stuff like Gobbo trackers and the like. Dark Wolf, a very small army indeed, but managing to get good kills on his Fountain Guard nonetheless. Dollar Elf over here, only one unit breaking 100, but it was the Wardens of the White Tower, so not too surprising. The Rangers not really able to get into a devastating position. Inarius, his Fountain Guard did the best, the Wardens of the White Tower nearly breaking 100 as well, so proving themselves to be good in this sort of fight. Froggy had a very torrid time of it, to be fair, but he did the best in a bad situation. Like, he fought to the bitter end and actually almost won that fight. Despite being in a really horrid situation, he almost won it. So that's a lot of credit to him for that. But yeah, ultimately, the defender's able to win, and a well-fought fight it was. So obviously this is, again, a replay that's on the slightly older side. I'm sure most of the players that were in this will be thinking, hang on a minute, we played this about 2 months ago. But like I said, I'm trying to sort of spread the reuse of maps out as much as I possibly can until the hotfix comes out, of course, when we have a few more siege battles to work with. Maybe I'll finally be able to get to use Minas Ithil, and we can revisit areas like Caer Andros as well. Still, big thank you to Eclipse for sending this one in, albeit quite a while ago. Big thank you to all the players for being a part of it. The next battle I do, like I said, there is that Bursa Gath siege, which I'm going to do at some point, but I think I've actually got the wrong version of the map for that, so I think I'll have to do some tweaking. But again, there's a few that I could pick from at this point. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.